IP Stretch, 7 videos stretching you further on your IP journey. The topic of this video is structures. Now, if you remember from the course, we talk about 6, or really 3 chunks and 3 chains. And in the course, we will have gone into more detail in a few. Almost certainly, we would have gone into detail about the 2 structure. Remember the 4 different types, conflict, and the rest. But probably in the course, we didn't have time to get into real depth and get creative with some of the others, because with all of these, there is the vanilla version, the normal straight version, and then there's the cosmopolitan, the banana split, the Knickerbocker glory, the ice cream sundae, lots of different types of ways to get really creative and lovely. So today, we're going to look at 2 others and get into more depth. We're first of all going to spend some time looking at logic, how to make that more interesting, and then we're going to see what we can learn about news to take that further. So let's look at logic. We remember the diagram, we look at the image and it makes sense, one step after another, after another, after another. And we recognize this as a structure we have used many, many times in many business presentations. How do we make that more interesting, more creative, more engaging for the audience? There's more than one way to go, but the way we're going to explore is doing this. Is to embrace our inner Sherlock and not just see logic as a step-by-step progress, but actually to see it as a mystery, questions to be solved. To see this whole piece as something tantalizing and interesting and exciting, because the question is, what will we find when we get there? Or how will we get there? Or who will we come across on the way? And I'm going to give you a few specific aspects about what makes something exciting and mysterious and how we can use that in presentations. First idea is, even when you're starting down here, do something to really make the end seem exciting. Don't just step towards here's some data and here's some ideas and here's some concepts. Go, okay, today, this is the question we're trying to solve. This is the mystery I'm trying to answer. It can be fairly simple. It can be, our business has been growing at 3% for the last few years. Can we get to 5? Can I convince myself and you guys that we can get to a 5% growth rate every year? And as you go along, repeatedly going back and going, we are here. Are we getting closer to that question? Are we getting closer to an answer? To make the end goal seem interesting, because that's what a mystery gives us. So that's one thing you can do. Next idea is to have some wrong turns along the way. So let's put in a wrong turn here. So you're walking along and you're going through, and actually you've ended up somewhere it feels like a bit of a dead end. Having a swing off into a direction where you realize, wait a minute, we're not going to get to an answer to our question. Whether it's Sherlock Holmes or House MD or any of these mysteries we love watching on television or reading in books, there often is, normally about a third of the way through, a wrong turn. We'll have a wrong turn, realize we've got to turn back and go in a different direction. Next, and the third one I'll give is drop some clues in. Give us bits of information that the audience can notice and wonder what the relevance will be for later, or even just try and calculate for themselves how important something might be. So we shall drop in a clue there, say, and let's drop another one in there. It's still a logic process. It's still stepping through an argument, probably with an awful lot of fairly standard data, but this seems a much, much more interesting way of working through a logic progression for your audience than purely stepping through it in the way we would have done before. So embrace your inner Sherlock. So that was logic. Now, let's flip over to the other side and talk about news. That's the image we're used to seeing. And actually, if you just follow that and go get the key information out early and then slowly decrease the relevance of the information, you're following the news structure in a vanilla standard way. But how do we create the glorious ice cream sundae version of this? Well, the clue is in the name. We're talking about news, so let's learn from the news. So here is the newest news, a new newspaper I've just developed, but it laid out absolutely as a standard newspaper will think. And it's very similar with websites. Websites make similar choices. We're going to talk about this part, and this part, and how we can learn things about being an inspirational presenter. So up at the top, what we have first is a consistent call out. The way that the newspaper brands itself is consistent, whether it's the New York Times or the Financial Times in London or anywhere around the world. It's something consistent which says, this is a newspaper. In fact, it's this newspaper. I pick this up. I see it on a screen. I know I'm getting news. Well, you can do the same as that when presenting. Let's say you've got a monthly update meeting. There's a part of it where you're going to give them a real update on things which are going on before then getting into business strategies and other elements. Do it in a consistent way. Have a consistent logo or consistent site design, or just have particular name and language for it. Give them a clear signal, this is news. Secondly, this one. This is Roger Federer waving his arm around, having celebrated, in this case, his 10th title. But if you read that headline, the business leaders warn of tough choices, that's our main story. This has got very little to do with the other. And newspapers will often do that. They will find an image or image of someone, normally someone handsome or, beautiful, who's in the news. Famous sports person, famous actor, Oscars night, beautiful women in long red dresses. They'll do this to catch your attention, actually, because it's something interesting, it's something exciting, it's something very current, and it's normally got a beautiful smiling face involved, to absolutely grab your attention. It's a grabber image. So you may be about to get into something slightly less exciting, but before you get into the update of the real thing you want to talk about in your presentation, sometimes put an image up of something from, the night out the day before, or some sportsman and something interesting happening, or something which will just draw them in, grab their attention, but have nothing to do with the story. Then thirdly, the story itself. We have the teaser headline, but it normally has some sense of a tease. It's not entirely the story. Business leaders warn of tough choices. Tough choices where? In what way? I can guess what that's going to get at, and it's telling me enough to give me a sense of, do I care and do I want to read it? But it's not telling me everything. It's the first paragraph or two which is really aiming to tell you the full story. The headline is trying to tell you enough to bring you in and tease you in, and then we follow in after that. So, have a consistent call out in the way that you announce news. Have a grabber image, potentially nothing to do with the actual story, and then tease with your headline before you give a full core aspect of what you're saying. Great. That is news, and we did have logic.